Today in the episode, nearly 30 Patriot missile systems for Ukraine. Lavrov threatens to block peace talks with the US. Russia's losses skyrocket. Again, over 1,000 soldiers down in just 24 hours. Oil revenues collapsing. Power outages in Ukraine. Russia targets energy system daily. Ukraine plans to acquire as much as 27 Patriot air defense systems from US manufacturers. This was stated by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy in an interview with The Guardian. According to him, Kyiv is working closely with international partners to strengthen the protection of Ukrainian airspace from Russian attacks. Zelenskyy also added that European countries could manage to provide Ukraine with the Patriot systems they currently have available. The Ukrainian president further stated that Putin is in a dead-end situation on the battlefield. And now, as the war for Russia has reached an impasse, with the Kremlin failing to achieve its objectives, now, according to Zelenskyy, the Russian authorities are forced to find at least something to show to their own people to keep on look victorious.
I believe he finds himself at a dead end when it comes to real successes on the battlefield. For him, the situation looks more like a stalemate. For us, it's difficult, but we are at home and defending what's ours. For him, it's a different story. He has radicalized his society and promised goals he has not achieved. That's why he needs to show some kind of achievement.
Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, once again expressed his desire to meet with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. However, no, of course, the Russian Federation is not seeking peace. The Russian representative emphasized that, in discussions about Russia's war against Ukraine in particular, and global law and order in general, certain Kremlin interests must be taken into account. He also called the potential allocation of frozen Russian assets in favor of Ukraine, a measure supported by Washington, as theft. Lavrov stated that the summer negotiations in Alaska between the Kremlin dictator Putin and President Trump should remain the foundation for any potential agreement to end the aggression against Ukraine. End of quote. Also, Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico opposes using frozen Russian assets to cover military expenses in Ukraine. The EU is considering allocating up to 185 billion euros of those assets to be reinvested in favor of Ukraine without actual confiscation. Belgium holds most of the assets and has raised concerns. A decision from the EU is expected in December 2025, but Mr. Fico thinks that withdrawing these funds could prolong the war and has already stated that Slovakia will not participate in mechanisms to release funds for military purposes.
Slovakia won't take part in any legal or financial schemes to seize frozen assets if those funds would be spent on military costs in Ukraine. Do we want to end the war, or are we stoking it? We are going to give 140 billion euros to Ukraine to keep the war going. So what does that mean? That the war will go on for at least another 2 years. Robert Fico, Slovak Prime Minister, in an interview with public broadcaster STVR.
After his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban revealed plans to create what he called a financial shield for Hungary. According to Reuters, this move is aimed at safeguarding Hungary's economy and public finances from any external threats or financial attacks. The idea is to protect the country's financial stability in an increasingly unpredictable global landscape.
Should there be any external attacks against Hungary or its financial system, the Americans gave their word that in such a case, they would defend Hungary's financial stability. I have also made an agreement with the U.S. president on a financial shield, that Hungary or its currency could be attacked, or that the Hungarian budget could be put in difficult situation, or that the Hungarian economy could be suffocated from the financing side. This should be forgotten. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, as quoted by Reuters.
Germany's defense minister, Boris Pistorius, stated the need for the country to be prepared for war in order to confront the growing threat from Russia, according to the Washington Post. His initiative has sparked heated political debates, although Pistorius remains the most popular politician in Germany. The minister pointed out that the Bundestag is short of about 80,000 soldiers and that the army is suffering from technological delays. As a solution, he proposed a voluntary service model, but faced opposition from the Christian Democratic Union, which blocked the initiative. According to a new report from the Bundestag, highlighted by Bild, Germany isn't ready for war yet. The problem? The country's health and medical system. In a worst-case scenario, Germany could see around 1,000 soldiers wounded daily, plus civilian casualties. Experts warn this would place a massive physical and mental strain on doctors and patients alike. Right now, pharmacies don't have enough supplies, and it's unclear which doctors are on standby or available as reserves. The situation is looking pretty dire if a major conflict were to break out as of now. While German Christian Democrats is trying blocking the inevitable Russian aggression, Ukraine's defense forces are fighting it and eliminated 1,090 Russian soldiers in the last day, according to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. In addition, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 7 Russian tanks, 7 armored vehicles, and 9 artillery systems. Since the beginning of the large-scale invasion, the Russian army has lost a total of 1,152,160 soldiers. 57 drones and 77 vehicles were also destroyed. Ukrainian defenses successfully repelled and suspended many enemy operations, particularly in the Pokrovsk direction, where the highest number of attacks were recorded. In total, 97 attacks were repelled in the sector and the surrounding region, with nearly 265 documented battles throughout the day. The General Staff reported airstrikes, missile use, bombings, and thousands of artillery shots, including kamikaze drones. In addition to Pokrovsk, other areas along the front saw significant activity, with numerous attacks repelled through bombings and artillery. Intense combat and Russian attacks also occurred in the south and on the flanks, where defensive forces neutralized attacks in various towns. Other fronts reported dozens of attacks and drone swarms. But the defense held firm and repelled a major offensive. The HIMARS family has evolved from being one of the most in-demand missile systems to a central component of regional security, and Lockheed Martin accelerated the production of launchers and ammunition. The American defense giant Lockheed Martin officially announced the market delivery of the 750th HIMARS on November 5th of this year. HIMARS has played a significant role in the largest war since World War II, which obviously is Russia-Ukraine war, initially contributing significantly to the destruction of the Russian occupation forces. Together with the ATACMS missiles, it has targeted a number of objectives, including those directly and deep within Russian rear. In 2023-24, the company achieved a production rate of 96 launchers annually. Additionally, 18 systems for Ukraine were ordered in September 2022, with delivery initially expected that very year, but there is still uncertainty about whether those deliveries have even begun. Russia's budget continues to lose revenue from raw material rents due to the fall in oil prices. In October, revenues from the oil and gas sector plummeted by 27%. The Russian Federation's treasury received 7.5 trillion rubles, 2 trillion less than the previous year, according to the Moscow Times Russian service. Under U.S. sanctions are Rosneft, Lukoil, Gazprom Neft, and Surgutneftgaz, which account for 70% of Russia's oil exports. Experts warn that even a partial reduction in supply could cost the budget 120 billion rubles per month. The Ministry of Finance has lowered its forecast for oil and gas revenues for 2025 to 8.6 trillion rubles and does not expect an increase in the next 3 years. Authorities plan to compensate for the losses by raising taxes and increasing public debt. Officially, the Russian Federation only recruits reservists to protect rear facilities, such as refineries, but almost all regions along the western border have begun this recruitment. Russian reservists are granted military personnel status with all corresponding salaries, guarantees, and benefits. The duration of this service, according to the contracts they sign, is either 6 months or 1 year. It seems that the conditions also specify that the service is carried out only in their own region. In other words, it is a mimicry of the methods used for organizing territorial defense. The recruitment of reservists has been announced in the regions of Smolensk, Pskov, Leningrad, and Kaliningrad, regions located along the western border of the Russian Federation. On the night of November 10th, the enemy launched 2 Kinzhal air-launched ballistic missiles, 5 S-300, S-400 air defense missiles, and 67 Shahed attack drones, Gerber drones, and drones of other types. This was announced by the Air Force of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. The air attack was repelled by aviation, anti-aircraft missile troops, electronic warfare units, unmanned systems, and mobile fire groups of Ukraine's defense forces. In the morning, air defenses had shot down and neutralized 52 enemy Shahed, Gerbera, and other types of drones in the east, south, and center of the country. Many are asking me these days, how are Ukrainians doing there in Kiev and all over Ukraine in terms of severe power outages caused by recent Russian terror attacks? Well, please meet someone who is going to not only tell you about how things are, but show you how they are and also how are Ukrainians doing.
So we've seen some crazy stuff in the last couple of months. Russian... Oh, hello.
Hard times. Electricity.
Electricity is gone.
You know, not everything.
Okay, good. Oh my God.
Це вирубається, да?
We're switching to generator right now.
Нормально. Наші життєві.
This is our, daily conditions, daily life.
Yeah.
Thousands of people are involved in stabilizing Ukraine's energy system following Russian attacks, as stated by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Russia has changed its tactics and is now trying to strike both power generation and distribution networks simultaneously. Moscow is specifically targeting substations. If thermal power plants stop working, nuclear power plants will not be able to safely decommission the electricity they've generated. My colleagues will continue this topic.
On the night of November 8th, Russia struck substations supplying electricity to the Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants. The NPPs were forced to reduce electricity production after the attack, reported the International Atomic Energy Agency. The shelling was not accidental but deliberately planned, noted Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha. He called for an urgent convening of the IAEA Board of Governors, as the Kremlin's actions threaten nuclear safety not only in Ukraine but also in European countries.
Russia is deliberately endangering nuclear safety in Europe. We call for an urgent meeting of the IAEA Board of Governors to respond to these unacceptable risks. We also urge all states that value nuclear safety, particularly China and India, to demand Russia stop reckless attacks on nuclear energy that risk a catastrophic incident. There needs to be global pressure to force Moscow to stop its nuclear blackmail. Andriy Sybiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Russia is deliberately targeting substations. If thermal power plants stop working, a nuclear power plant will not be able to safely decommission the produced electricity. This will lead to its emergency shutdown, as its own cooling systems may lose power since they directly depend on external electricity supply. In such conditions, an emergency stop of all processes will be required, including reactor shutdown and subsequent disconnection of all systems.
Now the task is to suppress the spirit of Ukrainians, the method of inflicting terrorist strikes and victims. And the most important thing is to simply neutralize all of Ukraine's energy, both heat and hydro, and block or destroy substations, nuclear power plants, whatever leads to their shutdown or suspension, thereby plunging everyone into darkness. The task is set so that Ukrainians already pressure the country's leadership to agree to Putin's conditions and exit this difficult situation. Putin cannot understand. I know well from the process of tough negotiations. Why do Ukrainians hold on? They should have surrendered long ago, but we do not surrender. And for him, this is the most unacceptable situation.
The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, once again noted the need for restraint to maintain nuclear safety. The IAEA also called for preventing an accident with serious radiological consequences.
Nuclear safety and security in Ukraine remains extremely precarious during the military conflict. Two operating NPPs, Khmelnytsky and Rivne, had to reduce electricity output after overnight attack on electrical substation critical for nuclear safety, from a statement by the International Atomic Energy Agency on X social network.
After a massive attack on Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy emphasized that the world must respond to Russian terror. Kyiv appreciates all steps partners have already taken, but new Russian strikes show that pressure on the aggressor country must be intensified.
There is little pressure on Russia, and any easing in existing pressure formats only motivates Putin to prolong this war, cause more harm to our country, our people, and others in the world. Weak response to Russian audacity, precisely audacity, gives Russia motive to continue this war. There must be so many sanctions, so much pressure, so much support for life, that Russia has no means left to exist in war conditions.
After achieving a local ceasefire, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant regained access to backup power supply from the grid for the first time in 6 months after repairing the second power line. IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi reported this: repair of the damaged section of the Ferosplavna unit number 1 began on the morning of November 8th after demining the territory. The line cut since May 7th, 2025 has been repaired. However, Grossi emphasized that the overall situation remains very unstable and the IAEA mission in Ukraine is far from complete. Over more than 3.5 years of full-scale war, the ZNPP has been disconnected from external power supply 10 times. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was seized by Russians in the first days of Russia's war against Ukraine. Since then, the Kremlin has constantly staged provocations at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, shelling the territory. Reported by Victoria Chistyuhina, UATV News.
Well, that's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with what's happening around the world through the Ukrainian perspective. See you soon, and goodbye.